I never thought I would be the kind of person who would destroy a 20-year friendship to save my own reputation. Best friends are supposed to be the people you can trust with anything, the ones who know all your secrets and love you anyway, the relationships that survive everything because they are built on honesty and loyalty and shared history. But I learned the hard way that when you are desperate enough, when the stakes feel high enough, when protecting yourself becomes more important than protecting the people you love, you can become someone you never imagined you would be. And once you cross that line, once you betray someone who trusted you completely, there is no going back to who you were before. My name is Alex Carter, and I am 32 years old, though the person I was just 2 years ago feels like a stranger to me now. This is my confession about how I cheated my best friend Jordan Hayes, how I systematically destroyed his life to keep my own secrets safe, and how that betrayal cost me everything that actually mattered while saving nothing that was truly worth protecting. This is not a story with easy villains or simple explanations. This is just the truth about what happens when fear and selfishness override every moral principle you thought you believed in. Jordan and I met on the first day of 7th grade, two awkward 12-year-olds assigned to the same homeroom in a Seattle middle school. We bonded over our shared love of video games and science fiction, and by the end of that first year, we were inseparable. We were different in almost every way that mattered. I came from a wealthy family in Mercer Island, while Jordan's parents were working-class immigrants from the Philippines who lived in a small apartment in Beacon Hill, but somehow those differences never seemed to matter when we were together. Jordan was the kind of friend everyone should have. He was loyal to a fault, honest even when honesty was uncomfortable, and genuinely kind in a way that was not performative or strategic. He remembered your birthday, showed up when you needed help moving, listened when you needed to talk, and never made you feel judged for your mistakes or failures. He was real in a way that was increasingly rare as we got older and moved in circles where everyone was performing some version of success. We went through everything together, the awkwardness of high school, the freedom of college, the uncertainty of early adulthood. When my parents went through a bitter divorce during my sophomore year at University of Washington, Jordan was the one who sat with me through the worst of it, never trying to fix anything, just being present. When Jordan's father died suddenly from a heart attack during our senior year, I was the one who helped him navigate the grief and the sudden financial responsibility he had to his mother and younger siblings. Our friendship was the kind that survives distance and change. After college, I went into software engineering and quickly landed a high-paying job at a tech startup. Jordan got his teaching credential and started working at a public high school in South Seattle, teaching biology to kids who reminded him of himself at that age. We had different careers, different income levels, different social circles, but we still met for drinks every Thursday, still texted constantly, still considered each other family in a way that went deeper than blood. I was the best man at Jordan's wedding when he married Melissa, a social worker he had met through a mutual friend. He was going to be the best man at my wedding when I eventually married my fiancée Victoria, a corporate executive I had met through work connections. Our lives were different, but parallel, and our friendship was the constant that connected everything else. That friendship was built on trust, on knowing each other completely, on being able to tell each other anything without fear of judgment or betrayal. Jordan knew things about me that no one else knew. My insecurities about never being as smart as everyone thought I was, my complicated feelings about my parents' wealth and expectations, my struggles with anxiety and the pressure to constantly perform success. And I knew his secrets too, his fears about money and being able to provide for his family on a teacher's salary, his occasional doubts about whether he had chosen the right career path, his complicated relationship with his mother who had never quite approved of Melissa. We trusted each other completely. That trust was the foundation of everything between us, the thing that made the friendship sacred and irreplaceable, and I destroyed it to save myself from embarrassment. The trouble started about 3 years ago when I was 29 and working as a senior engineer at a tech company called Innovatech. We were developing software for financial institutions, complex systems that handled millions of transactions and required absolute security and accuracy. I was good at my job, or at least I was good at appearing to be good at my job, which in the tech world is sometimes enough. But the truth was that I was struggling. The work was getting more complex, the expectations were rising, and I was starting to reach the limits of my actual competence. I had always been able to coast on being clever and personable, on knowing how to manage up and take credit for team successes, but now I was in a role where I actually needed to deliver sophisticated technical work, and I was not as capable as I had convinced everyone I was. I started cutting corners, small things at first, using code libraries I did not fully understand, implementing solutions I had found online without really verifying they were appropriate for our use case. skipping certain testing protocols because they were time-consuming and I was behind on deadlines. And then I made a serious mistake. I deployed a piece of code to our production system that had a critical security flaw, a vulnerability that could potentially expose client financial data if someone knew where to look for it. I had not caught it because I had not done the proper security audit, had not run the tests I was supposed to run, had been too rushed and too arrogant to admit I was not sure about what I was doing. The flaw went unnoticed for about 2 weeks, and in that time I became aware of what I had done, recognized the vulnerability, and realized that if it was discovered, it would not just cost me my job, but potentially destroy my entire career. This was the kind of mistake that could lead to regulatory investigations, lawsuits, maybe even criminal charges if client data had actually been compromised. I should have reported it immediately. I should have gone to my supervisor, admitted the error, and worked with the security team to fix it before any damage was done. That was the ethical thing to do, the responsible thing, the thing that might have cost me my job but would have protected the company and the clients and my own integrity. But I did not do that. Instead, I quietly fixed the vulnerability, erased the logs that would have shown what I had deployed and when, and hoped that no one would ever discover what had happened. For a few weeks, it seemed like I had gotten away with it. The flaw had been fixed, no data breach had occurred, and there was no evidence of what I had done. I told myself it was fine, that I had corrected my mistake before any real harm was done, that there was no point in creating a crisis over something that had been resolved. But then Marcus Williams, a security engineer who worked on my team, found something. He was doing a routine audit of our deployment history and noticed some inconsistencies, gaps in the logs that suggested someone had deleted records. He started investigating, and he was thorough and meticulous in a way that made my stomach drop every time I saw him working. Marcus and I were friendly, but not close. He was a few years older than me, serious about his work, the kind of person who cared deeply about doing things right, and had little patience for the shortcuts and corner cutting that were common in startup culture. I knew that if he discovered what I had done, he would report it without hesitation, regardless of the consequences for me personally. I tried to stay calm, to act normal, to hope that he would not find enough evidence to piece together what had actually happened. But Marcus was good at his job, much better than I was at mine, and after about a week of investigation, he came to me with questions. He said he had noticed the deleted logs and the timing of certain deployments, and he wanted to know if I knew anything about it. He was not accusatory, just thorough, doing his due diligence. And I looked him in the eye and lied. I said I did not know anything about deleted logs, that maybe it was a system glitch or an automated process that had cleaned up old records. He did not seem convinced, but he did not push it in that moment. He just said he was going to continue investigating because something did not add up, and it was important to understand what had happened for security compliance reasons. I left that conversation knowing I was in serious trouble. Marcus was not going to let this go, and eventually he was going to find enough evidence to prove what I had done. And when that happened, everything I had built, my career, my reputation, my relationship with Victoria, whose father was a major investor in Innovatech, all of it would collapse. I was terrified. I could not sleep, could barely eat, spent every day at work waiting for the other shoe to drop. And in that state of panic and desperation, I started thinking about how to protect myself, how to deflect suspicion, how to create an alternative explanation for what Marcus was discovering. That is when I thought of Jordan. Jordan had visited me at work a few times over the years, stopping by when he was in the neighborhood or meeting me for lunch. He had been in the office, had met some of my colleagues, had even sat at my desk once when I stepped away to take a phone call. And because we were best friends, because I trusted him completely, I had given him my Wi-Fi password and my laptop login information so he could use my computer when he visited, which meant Jordan had access to my system, which meant if someone was looking for an explanation for unauthorized deployments and deleted logs, Jordan could theoretically be blamed. The thought was repulsive to me at first. This was my best friend, my brother in everything but blood, the person who had been there for me through every difficult moment of my life. The idea of framing him for my mistakes was unconscionable, but the fear was stronger than my loyalty. The stakes felt impossibly high. I was engaged to Victoria, and her father, David Sterling, was not just an investor in Innovatech, but a powerful figure in Seattle's tech and business community. If I was exposed as incompetent and dishonest, I would not just lose my job. I would lose Victoria, lose my social standing, lose access to the world of wealth and influence I had worked so hard to be part of. And I convinced myself that I could frame Jordan in a way that would not really hurt him. He was not in the tech industry, so this would not damage his career. He had nothing to do with Innovatech, so at worst, he would just be questioned and cleared when they realized he had no motive or sophisticated knowledge to have done what I had done. It would be uncomfortable for him, but temporary, and then everything would blow over and we could go back to normal. I told myself these lies, these rationalizations, because I needed to believe that what I was about to do was not as monstrous as it actually was. So I started planting evidence. I accessed Jordan's email account. I knew his password because we had helped each other with tech problems over the years and had not been careful about security between us because we trusted each other, and I sent myself emails from his account asking technical questions about our systems at Innovatech. I made them look like he was curious about the architecture, maybe a little too curious, asking about access points and deployment procedures. I modified logs to show that someone using Jordan's credentials had accessed my computer remotely on dates when I knew he had been at my apartment and could have theoretically used my laptop. I created a trail of digital breadcrumbs that would lead an investigation toward Jordan and away from me. And when Marcus came to me again with more questions, asking specifically about who else had access to my systems, I very reluctantly mentioned that my friend Jordan sometimes used my computer when he visited, and that I had not really thought about the security implications of sharing my login information. Marcus asked for Jordan's contact information so he could interview him as part of the investigation, and I gave it to him, knowing exactly what I was doing, knowing that I was pointing suspicion at an innocent person to save myself. The investigation accelerated from there. Marcus brought his findings to our chief technology officer, and they brought in an outside security firm to do a comprehensive audit. And that firm found all the evidence I had planted, the emails from Jordan's account, the access logs showing his credentials on my system, the timing that aligned with his visits to my office. It looked like Jordan had used his access to my computer to deploy the flawed code and then delete the evidence, either as some kind of sabotage or as a misguided attempt to help me that had gone wrong. No one could figure out a clear motive, which was the weak point in the frame-up, but the technical evidence was strong enough that Innovatech's lawyers decided they needed to take action. They filed a police report alleging unauthorized access to computer systems and potential corporate sabotage. Jordan was contacted by detectives. They showed up at his school, questioned him in front of his principal and colleagues, treated him like a criminal suspect. He was confused and terrified, had no idea what they were talking about, kept insisting that he had never done anything to my work computer beyond checking his email when he was visiting me. He called me immediately after the police left, his voice shaking, asking me what was happening, why anyone would think he had done something to my company's systems. And I played the confused friend, said I had no idea, that there must be some mistake, that I had told the investigators he would never do anything like what they were suggesting. I lied to him. I looked my best friend in the eye, metaphorically, and I lied to protect myself from the consequences of my own actions. The legal process moved forward. Innovatech was taking this seriously because of the regulatory implications of the security flaw, and they needed someone to blame who was not one of their own employees. Jordan became that person, the outside actor who had compromised their systems. Jordan hired a lawyer he could not afford, borrowed money from his mother and from Melissa's parents, and tried to defend himself against charges he did not understand. He told me everything, shared all the details of his legal situation, asked for my help in understanding the technical aspects of what he was being accused of, and I helped him in carefully calibrated ways. I explained the technical concepts in ways that were just unhelpful enough that he could not mount an effective defense. I suggested legal strategies that I knew would not work. I acted like the supportive friend while actively sabotaging his ability to prove his innocence. The case never went to trial. Innovatech's lawyers and Jordan's lawyer eventually negotiated a settlement where Jordan agreed to pay $15,000 in restitution and accept a permanent ban from accessing any Innovatech systems in exchange for the criminal charges being dropped. His lawyer advised him to take the deal because fighting it would cost more than $15,000 in legal fees alone, and there was a risk of actual criminal conviction if they went to trial. So Jordan, who had done absolutely nothing wrong, who had been betrayed by his best friend in the worst possible way, paid $15,000 he did not have and accepted responsibility for something he did not do just to make the nightmare stop. The professional consequences for him were devastating. The accusation became public record when Innovatech filed their initial police report. Jordan's school found out that he had been investigated for computer crimes and corporate sabotage. And even though the criminal charges were dropped, even though he maintained his innocence, the school district decided he was a liability. They did not fire him outright because the union would have fought that, but they transferred him to a different school in a much worse neighborhood, took away his advanced biology classes and assigned him to general science, essentially demoted him and made his work life miserable enough that he would consider leaving on his own. His reputation in the education community was damaged. Other teachers looked at him differently. Parents requested that their children be moved out of his classes. He went from being a respected educator to someone under a cloud of suspicion, all because of a crime he did not commit that I had committed and then framed him for. His marriage started showing strain. Melissa knew Jordan was innocent, but the stress of the legal bills, the damaged reputation, and the career setback put enormous pressure on their relationship. They fought about money constantly, about whether Jordan should just quit teaching and find something else, about whether they could ever recover financially from this. And through all of it, Jordan leaned on me. I was his best friend, the person he trusted most in the world, and he needed my support to get through this nightmare. So I showed up, played the role of loyal friend, listened to his pain and anger and confusion, all while knowing that I was the source of everything he was suffering. I told myself I would make it up to him somehow. I told myself that once enough time had passed, I would find a way to help him recover financially, to restore his reputation, to undo the damage I had caused. I told myself I had not really had a choice, that I had been protecting not just myself, but Victoria and our future together. But the truth was simpler and uglier than all those rationalizations. I had sacrificed my best friend to save my own career and reputation. I had valued my image more than his well-being. I had chosen myself over someone who had never chosen anything over our friendship. For about a year, I lived with this secret. I stayed close to Jordan, maintained the friendship, acted like nothing had changed between us. I got promoted at Innovatech after the security incident was resolved, with my bosses seeing me as someone who had been victimized by a friend's betrayal rather than the actual culprit. I married Victoria in an expensive wedding where Jordan stood up as my best man, giving a heartfelt speech about loyalty and friendship that made me feel sick to my stomach. Victoria and I bought a house in Queen Anne with help from her father's money. I was living the life I had wanted, the successful career and wealthy marriage and prestigious social circle. And I had achieved it by destroying someone who had loved me unconditionally. I thought I had gotten away with it. I thought I could just carry the guilt privately, and eventually it would fade, would become just another regret that I learned to live with. But secrets have a way of coming out, and karma has a way of finding you even when you think you have successfully outrun it. The unraveling started at a dinner party about 18 months after Jordan's settlement with Innovatech. Victoria and I were hosting, and we had invited several couples from our social circle, including Nathan Chen, a mutual friend of Jordan's, and mine from college who worked as an accountant at a different tech company. Nathan and I had not been as close as Jordan and I, but we had maintained a friendship over the years, and he knew both of us well. He had been aware of Jordan's legal troubles and had always seemed skeptical of the official story, but he had never said anything directly to me about his doubts. At the dinner party, after several drinks, Nathan pulled me aside and said he needed to talk to me about something serious. We went out to my back patio, and he told me that he had been doing some thinking about Jordan's case, and something had never quite added up for him. He said that Jordan was one of the least technically sophisticated people he knew, someone who barely understood how to use Excel, let alone how to deploy code to production systems or delete server logs. The idea that Jordan could have done what he was accused of had never made sense. But more than that, Nathan said, the whole situation had benefited me in convenient ways. The investigation had cleared me of any wrongdoing, had actually enhanced my reputation within Innovatech, and had removed any scrutiny from my work. And that timing felt suspicious to him. He said he did not have proof of anything, but he wanted to ask me directly. Had I had anything to do with what happened to Jordan? I should have known that Nathan would eventually piece it together. He was smart and analytical, and he knew both Jordan and me well enough to sense when something was wrong. But I was not prepared for the direct confrontation, and I panicked. I denied everything, of course. I said I was offended that he would even suggest I could do something like that to my best friend, that the accusation was insulting and baseless. I said that I had been just as confused as everyone else about what had happened, and that I had supported Jordan throughout the entire ordeal. Nathan looked at me for a long moment, and I could see that he did not believe me. But he did not have evidence, just suspicion and intuition, so he could not push it further. He just said that if I had done something to Jordan, it would eventually come out. And when it did, I would lose everything that actually mattered. Then he left the party early, and I stood on my patio feeling like the walls were closing in. I told Victoria that Nathan and I had argued about something work-related and that the friendship was probably over. She was annoyed but not particularly concerned, more focused on whether his departure had disrupted her carefully planned dinner party than on the actual substance of what had happened. That was when I started to realize that my marriage, the thing I had sacrificed Jordan to protect, was not actually what I had thought it was. Victoria and I looked good together on paper. We attended the right events and knew the right people and projected the right image. But there was no real intimacy, no genuine connection, no foundation beyond a shared social ambition. She did not know me the way Jordan knew me. She did not care about my inner life or my struggles or my growth as a person. She cared about my earning potential, my social connections, and my ability to fit into her father's world of wealth and influence. I had destroyed a real friendship to preserve a superficial marriage, and I was beginning to understand what a catastrophic trade I had made, but I still did not confess. I was too deep into the deception, too afraid of the consequences, too invested in maintaining the life I had built on lies. Then, about 3 months after the dinner party with Nathan, something happened that forced everything into the open. Marcus Williams, the security engineer who had investigated the original incident at Innovatech, left the company. And on his way out, either out of principle or spite, or just a desire to clear his conscience, he sent an email to several people, including our CTO, detailing his doubts about the official conclusion of the investigation. He said that he had never been fully convinced that Jordan Hayes was the culprit, that the evidence had felt planted in ways he could not quite prove, and that he suspected the real perpetrator was still within the company. He said he had not spoken up at the time because he could not prove his suspicions and did not want to jeopardize his own career, but now that he was leaving, he felt obligated to voice his concerns. He did not name me specifically, but he pointed to the pattern of whose career had benefited from the investigation, and anyone paying attention could connect the dots. Innovatech's CTO, probably more worried about liability than truth, ordered a new investigation. They brought in a different security firm, gave them access to everything, and asked them to review the original findings with fresh eyes. This new firm was more thorough, less motivated to confirm the existing narrative, and more interested in actually understanding what had happened. They found inconsistencies in the evidence against Jordan, things that Marcus had noticed but not been able to prove. They found the planted emails and realized the technical questions were too sophisticated for someone with Jordan's background, but exactly aligned with what someone in my role would ask to make it look like a curious outsider. They pulled additional logs that I had not known were backed up in an off-site system, logs that showed my actual activities during the time in question, the deployment of the flawed code, the deletion of evidence, all of it. And they recommended that Innovatech report their findings to law enforcement because it appeared that the original investigation had identified the wrong suspect and that an employee had deliberately framed an innocent person for their own mistakes. I found out about the new investigation when I was called into a meeting with our CTO, our head of legal, and 2 detectives. They laid out what they had found, the evidence of my actual culpability and my deliberate framing of Jordan. And they asked if I wanted to explain myself before they proceeded with formal charges. I sat in that conference room and felt my entire world collapse. There was no talking my way out of this, no charming or deflecting or managing up. The evidence was clear, and I was caught. I could have stayed silent, invoked my right to a lawyer, tried to minimize the legal damage, but something in me broke in that moment. Maybe it was exhaustion from carrying the secret for so long. Maybe it was the sudden understanding that I was going to lose everything anyway. Maybe it was just the final recognition that I had become someone completely unrecognizable. So I confessed. I told them everything, the original mistake, the cover-up, the panic when Marcus started investigating, the decision to frame Jordan, the careful planting of evidence, the whole sordid story. They fired me on the spot. The detectives arrested me for filing a false police report, obstruction of justice, and computer fraud. And word spread through Seattle's tech community almost immediately that Alex Carter, the rising star engineer, had framed his best friend for his own crimes. Victoria left me before I even made bail. She said she could not be associated with someone who had done what I had done, that her father would never forgive the embarrassment I had brought to their family, that our marriage had been a mistake. She filed for divorce within a week, and I did not contest it. My sister Rebecca, who was a therapist and had always been my moral compass, called me and said she was ashamed to be related to me, that what I had done to Jordan was unforgivable, that she needed distance from me while she processed her disappointment. My parents, who had been proud of my career success, were humiliated. My mother could barely speak to me. My father, in one brief phone call, said I had disgraced the family name and he did not want to hear from me until I had made things right with Jordan, if that was even possible. But the worst part, the absolutely devastating part, was facing Jordan. The prosecutors working my case contacted him to inform him that he had been wrongly accused, that the actual culprit had confessed, and that his record would be cleared. They offered to help him pursue a civil lawsuit against both me and Innovatech for the damages he had suffered. Jordan did not call me. He did not yell or confront or demand explanations. He just went completely silent, cutting off all contact, blocking my number and my email in every possible way I could reach him. I tried anyway. I sent letters to his house, knowing he probably threw them away without reading them. I sent messages through mutual friends who told me he wanted nothing to do with me. I showed up at his school once, and security escorted me off the property before I could even see him. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to somehow make him understand that I had been terrified and desperate and had made a terrible choice that I regretted more than anything I had ever done. But he would not give me the opportunity, and I could not blame him. Because what could I possibly say that would matter? I had betrayed him in the most fundamental way imaginable. I had taken his trust, his friendship, his loyalty, and I had weaponized all of it against him to save myself. I had destroyed his career, damaged his marriage, cost him money he did not have, and put him through months of legal hell, all to protect my own reputation. There was no apology big enough for that. There were no words that could undo what I had done. The legal consequences played out over the next several months. I pled guilty to the charges against me and received a sentence of 18 months in prison, plus restitution to both Jordan and Innovatech. I lost my house, my savings, everything I had accumulated during my years of supposed success. Innovatech settled Jordan's lawsuit against them for an undisclosed amount that I heard was substantial, enough to cover his legal fees and the financial damage they had caused, plus compensation for the harm to his reputation and career. I wrote him a letter from jail, the only form of communication I had access to. I told him that I knew he would probably never read it, that I had no right to ask for his forgiveness or even his acknowledgement, but that I needed him to know some things. I told him that what I had done was not his fault, that he had been a perfect friend, and I had been a terrible one, that everything that had happened to him was the result of my cowardice and selfishness. I told him that I understood if he never wanted to speak to me again, that I had destroyed something irreplaceable, and I would carry that loss for the rest of my life. I told him that he had been right about me all those years, when he used to say I was better than my worst impulses, that I had the capacity to be a good person if I would just stop caring so much about what other people thought. He had seen potential in me that I had failed to live up to, and I was sorry for disappointing him. I told him that I hoped he and Melissa were okay, that they had survived the damage I had caused, that he had gotten back to the career he loved and the life he deserved, and I told him that I loved him, that our friendship had been one of the best things in my life, and that I would spend the rest of my days wishing I'd been brave enough to be the friend he had always been to me. I sent the letter, and I never received a response. I do not know if he read it, or if he threw it away, or if Melissa intercepted it to protect him from having to engage with me. I only know that my attempt at apology disappeared into silence. I served 13 months of my 18-month sentence, released early for good behavior. I came out of prison to a world where I was unemployable in my field, unmarried, estranged from most of my family and all of my friends, and carrying a criminal record that would follow me for the rest of my life. I moved into a small studio apartment in Tacoma, far enough from Seattle that I was unlikely to run into anyone from my old life. I got a job doing basic IT support for a small nonprofit, work that was far below my qualifications, but all I could get with my background. I started therapy, trying to understand how I had become someone capable of such profound betrayal. The therapist helped me see the patterns that had led me to that point. My deep insecurity about my own worth, my fear of being exposed as less competent than people thought I was, my tendency to value external validation over internal integrity, my willingness to sacrifice real relationships for superficial status. She helped me understand that the choice to frame Jordan had not been a single moment of weakness, but the culmination of years of choosing image over substance, performance over authenticity, fear over courage, but understanding why I did what I did, not fix the damage or restore what I had destroyed. It just helped me see clearly what I had lost and why I had lost it. That was a year ago. I am 32 now, living a quiet, modest life that looks nothing like the successful existence I thought I was building. I work my basic IT job, I attend therapy every week, I volunteer at a legal aid clinic helping people who have been wrongly accused of crimes, trying to do some small amount of good to balance the immense harm I caused. I have tried several more times to reach Jordan, not because I think he owes me forgiveness, but because I want him to know that I am trying to be better, that I am living differently, that I understand what I did and why it was wrong. But he has maintained his silence. He moved to a different school district, got a fresh start somewhere where people do not know the story. According to mutual acquaintances who I occasionally hear gossip from, he and Melissa are doing well. They bought a house. They are talking about starting a family. His career recovered, his reputation was restored, and he has built a good life despite everything I put him through. And I am genuinely happy for him, even though I'm not part of that life, even though I will never know firsthand how he is doing. Nathan Chen, the friend who had confronted me at that dinner party, reached out to me about 6 months ago. He said he was not offering friendship, but he wanted me to know that he had visited Jordan and that Jordan was doing okay, all things considered. He said Jordan did not talk about me, did not seem to carry visible anger or bitterness, had just moved on with his life as if I had never existed, which Nathan said was probably the healthiest thing Jordan could do, but also the saddest because it meant that 20 years of friendship had been so thoroughly destroyed that it could not even exist as a memory worth maintaining. Nathan said he was telling me this not to make me feel better, but to make sure I understood the full cost of what I had done. I had not just hurt Jordan temporarily, I had erased myself from his life completely, had destroyed a bond that had been one of the defining relationships for both of us. Then Nathan said something I have thought about every day since. He said that the tragedy was not just what I had done to Jordan, but what I had done to myself. I had sacrificed my integrity, my best friendship, my capacity to trust myself, all to protect a life that had not been worth protecting, a marriage that was hollow and a career that was built on insecurity rather than genuine passion. He said I had traded everything that was real for things that were fake, and I would spend the rest of my life knowing I had made that trade and could never undo it. He was right. That is exactly what I did, and that is exactly what I have to live with. I think about Jordan constantly. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, or if he has successfully moved me into the category of painful memories that are best not revisited. I wonder if there is anything I could ever do that would demonstrate how profoundly sorry I am, or if some betrayals are simply beyond redemption. I wonder what our lives would look like now if I had made different choices at that crucial moment, if I had been brave enough to confess my mistake at work instead of framing an innocent person. I probably would have lost my job, would have faced professional consequences, might have lost Victoria and the prestigious life I was building. But I would have kept my integrity. I would have kept Jordan's friendship. I would have kept the ability to look at myself in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. Instead, I have to live with knowing that when I was tested, when the stakes felt highest, I chose the worst possible path. I chose self-preservation over loyalty, image over truth, cowardice over courage. I chose to destroy my best friend to keep my secret safe. And in doing so, I did not save anything worth having. I lost the marriage anyway, lost the career anyway, lost the reputation and the social standing, and all the things I thought I was protecting. The only difference is that I lost them as a disgraced criminal who had betrayed someone innocent, rather than as someone who had made a mistake and faced the consequences with honesty. I made everything worse by lying. I hurt more people, caused more damage, and ended up in a worse place than I would have if I had just told the truth from the beginning. That is the lesson I learned too late. Secrets are never worth keeping if the cost of keeping them is your integrity. Protecting your image is never worth sacrificing someone else's well-being. And the consequences of doing the right thing, however painful, are always less devastating than the consequences of betraying someone who trusts you. I know these things now. I understand them in my bones, in my lived experience of having lost everything that mattered by making the wrong choice. But knowledge and understanding do not bring Jordan back. They do not restore the friendship or erase the damage or give me another chance to be the person I should have been. They just give me clarity about what I lost and why, and the burden of carrying that knowledge for the rest of my life. I work my modest job, live my quiet life, and try to be someone who would never again make the choices I made. I try to help others when I can, to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable, to value relationships over reputation. I do these things not because I think they will earn me redemption or forgiveness from Jordan, but because they are the only way I can live with myself now that I understand what truly matters. Jordan was right about me when we were young. I did have the capacity to be a good person, to live with integrity, to value the right things. I just lost sight of that capacity when fear and insecurity took over, and by the time I remembered who I was supposed to be, it was too late. The damage was done, the friendship was destroyed, and I had become exactly the kind of person I had always feared becoming. Someone who would sacrifice anything and anyone to protect their own comfort and status. I live with that knowledge every day. I carry the weight of what I did to Jordan, The understanding that I destroyed someone innocent to save myself. The recognition that I cannot undo or fix or make right what I broke. All I can do is try to be different going forward, to make choices based on integrity rather than fear, to treat people with honesty and respect even when it costs me something. It is not enough. It will never be enough to balance what I took from Jordan, the pain I caused him, the trust I violated, but it is all I have. This commitment to living differently, this understanding of what matters and what does not, this hard-won knowledge about the true cost of betrayal and deception. I cheated my best friend to keep my secret safe, and in doing so, I lost everything worth having. The friendship itself, my integrity, my ability to trust myself, my connection to the person I thought I was. Jordan is gone from my life, and he should be. I do not deserve his friendship or his forgiveness or even his acknowledgement. I destroyed something precious and irreplaceable, and the loss of it is the price I pay for my choices. That is my confession. That is my truth. That is what I have to live with. If there is any purpose to this story, any lesson that might help someone else avoid the path I took, it is this: no secret is worth protecting if the cost is betraying someone who trusts you. No career, no relationship, no status or image or reputation is worth sacrificing your integrity to maintain. The consequences of honesty, however painful, are always better than the consequences of betrayal. Because betrayal does not just hurt the person you betray. It destroys who you are. It poisons every relationship you have, and it leaves you alone with the knowledge of what you are capable of when you choose self-preservation over every principle you claim to believe in. I know this because I lived it. I made the choice to betray, and I have spent every day since living with the wreckage of that decision. Jordan deserved better. He deserved the friend he thought I was, the loyalty he had always shown me, the honesty our friendship was built on. I failed him in every possible way, and I will carry that failure for the rest of my life, not as punishment, but as truth, the permanent record of who I became when I let fear override everything else. This is my story. This is my shame. This is what I did and what I lost and what I have to live with. I cheated my best friend to keep my secret safe, and in doing so, I destroyed the one relationship that had been built on absolute trust and unconditional loyalty. There is no redemption for this, no easy ending where everything works out. There is only the truth, the consequences, and the long, difficult work of becoming someone who would never again make the choices that led me here. That is all I have left, the commitment to be better, even though better will never be good enough to undo the damage I caused. I am Alex Carter. I destroyed my best friend to protect myself, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing what that says about who I really was when it mattered most. May my story serve as warning. Guard your integrity more carefully than your image, value real relationships over superficial status, and never, ever betray someone who trusts you completely. Because once that trust is broken, once that betrayal is complete, there is no going back. There is only the permanent loss of something irreplaceable and the knowledge that you were the one who destroyed it. That is my truth. That is my burden. That is the price I pay every day for choosing to cheat my best friend just to keep my secret safe.